Look at what's going on with this storm. Hurricane Irma is still out there, still a very powerful storm. Here's Puerto Rico. Here's the island of Hispaniola. Haiti's on the west side of it, and the Dominican Republic is on the east side of it. And this is making its way through the Turks and Caicos Islands. And you can see as the sun gets a little lower in the sky with this satellite picture, it starts disappearing a little bit. But a remarkably detailed satellite picture. You can even see the inside of the eye right on down the barrel of that thing. So it's very, very powerful storm. It's weakened a little bit, but it's still a good, strong Category 5. It did have 185-mile-an-hour winds. Now it's down to 175. Oh, boy. And the barometric pressure was up a little bit, not quite as strong as it was in terms of barometric pressure. It was at 914 millibars, so that's up. So that's a good sign, but not much. Category 5 storm, there's where it is by the overnight hours, still 165-mile-an-hour winds. There's where it is by tomorrow afternoon, 160-mile-an-hour winds. There's where it is by Saturday morning, Friday night, Saturday morning, 155-mile-an-hour winds right on into here. Now, there's the cone. It could be over northern Cuba, or it could be on a little bit farther northward into the Bahamas. There's where it is by Friday night, by Saturday afternoon, 155-mile-an-hour winds. And there's where it is by Sunday morning. Now, remember, it had 155-mile-an-hour winds. It's not likely to weaken much as it moves on in over South Florida. Now, there is still some wiggle room as to exactly where this is going to go. Regardless, Florida is going to get kicked by this South Florida. There's Miami, Fort Lauderdale, on northward to West Palm Beach. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's weakened somewhat. It's still a Category 4 storm with 130-mile-an-hour winds, and it's still very, very likely drawing in the possibility of storm surge flooding, tidal flooding on the east coast of Florida, especially on the east coast of Florida, from Miami to Palm Beach to Fort Pierce and northward from there. Now, this says it's still a Category 4 storm at 1 o'clock in the morning, Sunday night late. I kind of doubt it. I do tend to think it's still going to be a real strong hurricane as it moves on in over the Orlando area toward Daytona Beach. Once again, remembering the cone, that the center line is not where you focus. It's going to be somewhere within this cone, but that's a good approximation right on through this area by 1 o'clock in the morning Monday. Now, that's where things are at that point, but after it's been over land, it's really going to start to weaken. It'll likely be 90-mile-an-hour winds coming up by Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock. You can see between Valdosta and the highway sign there. 1 o'clock, there's where it is in terms of that, and it continues over land for a longer period of time from Monday afternoon into Tuesday afternoon. It becomes a tropical storm at 45-mile-an-hour winds. You will note that we are not within that cone, so it's not likely that we're going to get hit by this thing other than very, very indirectly. Might see some wind gusts to near tropical storm force, 40 miles an hour, and you might see a little bit of rainfall into the day coming up late on Monday and on into Tuesday. Here's where things are by Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. The forecast models, timing on this doesn't matter that much. It just matters where they're going, and really they're pretty conclusive, certainly for the first part of it. They're all just a lockstep. Then they fan out a little bit over the Florida Peninsula, either on the west coast or mainly on the eastern portion of the Florida Peninsula. There's where things are all the way, again, into next week, and show you what's going on. They widen out. Here's what's going on in terms of the forecast models. The euro is in the blue color, the turquoise color. The purple color is the GFS. Here's where things are by Sunday morning at 7. The euro's got a little bit farther westward. The GFS has got it right on in over the Miami area, but then keeps it offshore a little bit by Sunday evening, whereas the euro has a little bit right on in over land. And that one's following pretty much the Hurricane Center's view on things. There's where things are by Monday morning at 8. It's still offshore and stronger for the GFS and makes landfall toward the Charleston area, whereas the euro, again, is over land and it's weakening. And those where things are by 7 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. It's falling apart from there on in. And again, just brings us some rainfall into the area. How much rain? Well, here are a couple of approximations from the GFS. A lot of rain for Miami up to Jacksonville to Savannah. Again, that's the GFS. Remember, it hits Miami, close to Miami, stays out over the water, and then hooks left over Savannah and Charleston, producing very, very heavy rain there. Produces around 2/3 of an inch of rainfall for us. Here's the euro. It takes more of a landward course over right on up the Florida Peninsula 9.5, 6 3/4, 6 inches of rain. Only around ½ an inch of rain for our part of the world, so they get the big rain farther inland. The forecast models, they take a snapshot of the atmosphere and then project that weather forward in time and space. In other words, they're right at 7 a.m. and then at 7 p.m. they take a snapshot and boom, put it down in time. Those are the two times a day that they usually do it. Forecast models, we look for an agreement between the different models, but also run-to-run consistency. In other words, if the GFS is proposing the same solution at 7 a.m. and C at 7 p.m. More data in means a more accurate forecast from the model. And in the past few days, we've had more balloon launches and a Gulfstream 4 aircraft. This one right there is flying around the storm periphery, sampling the atmosphere all the way up to 45,000 feet and into the eye. These are the standard hurricane aircraft that you're looking at. They also have C-130s now that are part of the fleet that do that. Here's a look at what's going on. Tomorrow, warm, 77. A little cooler coming up over the weekend. And of course, by late Monday into the day on Tuesday, we're watching for some rainfall, likely from Irma, but Irma likely staying away.